December of 2024, I ventured to the Hawaiian island of Molokai with my friend Brett to hunt axis deer. Guided by Brian Gomes from Kailea Outdoors, we hunted hard for 3 days across some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. Official estimates state Molokai has somewhere between 50 and 70,000 axis deer, although I have heard estimates as high as 90,000. That many deer on an island with only 7 or maybe 8,000 people cause a ton of damage to yards, crops, and the landscape. A few years ago, Molokai experienced a terrible drought, and the overpopulated axis deer herd suffered immensely. Deer died at an alarming rate, necessitating drastic action by Molokai locals and the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources. Conservation hunting targeting does is one of the best, quickest ways to reduce population numbers. I had such a good time on my first Molokai hunt that I decided I had to return. So, in December of 2025, I went back to Molokai with my own rifle and friends Dale and Max to experience another conservation hunt. This time, we hunted for 2 days, sticking to one of the areas most damaged by overpopulation. I was excited for this hunt, not only because I knew we would see a lot of deer, but also because this was Max's first ever time hunting. Max, you getting ready for your first hunt? What do you think?
Excited.
Yeah?
Yeah. That's our first game of the day right there.
Yeah.
First wildlife.
They just kind of, they out meandering right now, just kind of feeding before the sun get up.
We woke up early the first morning, hitched a ride to Brian's house, loaded up his Can-Am, then headed into the Hawaiian homestead land Brian had access to. I followed Brian's son/apprentice, Brody, up the mountain to get to our first spot of the day, while Brian took Dale and Max to their hunting spots. Brody and I bashed our way up the mountain in the dark, stopping only once before arriving at our landmark, a scrub tree on a ridge overlooking a draw Brody expected the axis to meander up through. Brody and I sat under this tree as the sun rose, glassing for deer. I had a new pair of binoculars and a laser rangefinder I put to good use, picking out landmarks in the terrain before us. According to Brian, every morning after spending all night feeding in the flat, lower part of Molokai, the axis deer would make their way uphill. Thousands of axis deer would make this daily journey to the mountaintop forest in search of shade, then march right back down as the sun set in the evening. That first morning, however, the axis did not need to seek out shade. Heavy clouds threatening rain blocked our view of the higher mountains, shading and cooling the mountainside. We expected to see axis deer moving uphill by the dozen, but while the skies remained overcast, they stayed put on the lower part of the property. After sitting and seeing nothing, Brody decided we needed to move further uphill. Up we hiked, bumping a herd of axis as we crested the next ridge. We reached our next spot and sat down to wait. As we sat there, we could hear a vocal axis doe chirping away, likely warning her kin of our presence. We sat at our next spot for about a half an hour, and didn't see any deer there either, despite hearing a series of distant gunshots. So Brody decided to move yet again. Further uphill we went. Hunting on Molokai, you are either moving uphill or downhill the entire time. There are basically no flat spots. While walking around the hills and draws of Molokai, we frequently came across huge axis wallows. Wallows are large areas where the red Hawaiian dirt was exposed through the vegetation, featuring hoofprints, scat, and shed antlers all around. These frequent scenes of destruction really illustrate how hard the axis deer herd is on the confined landscape of Molokai. Throughout the morning, Brody kept us moving. Eventually, he did receive a call from his dad, Brian, to tell him to head back to where we started and just sit there and wait. Back to the first tree we went to sit and glass. While back at the first tree, Brody and I saw one more herd of axis deer, but they were moving too fast and were too far away to take an ethical shot. Don't do a whole lot of guided hunts, but it's kind of a requirement out here in Hawaii to get, especially on Molokai, to get access. I mean, I guess if you're just like friends with somebody, but that's tough to do sometimes. But this is my third guided hunt in Hawaii. I did a pig hunt, dog and knife pig hunt a few years ago, and then I hunted with Brian last year. And in other news, apparently Max got his first deer just maybe 30 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago even. So that's exciting. He's over with Brian. So I'm glad that Max is with Brian today. It's good for him. It's good. It's good news. Wish I could have seen that. That'd have been fun. But happy for him. Elsewhere on the property, while Brody and I sat and studied the terrain, Max shot his first deer with Brian. He made a clean, ethical hit, bringing the doe down with a single, well-placed shot from his new rifle. An exciting milestone for him, and I wish I could have been there to see it. Brody and I bumped another herd of axis deer while moving even further up the mountain. It was now midday, and the heat was brutal. We paused under the shade of a large familiar tree to get some rest. The previous year, Brett took a shot at an axis doe resting under this tree, but the tree shielded the doe when the bullet struck the thick exposed root system that stuck about 12 inches out of the ground. While Brody and I hiked all over the damn mountain, Brian and Max picked up Dale with the Can-Am. An experienced hunter, Dale had sat patiently in the spot Brian placed him all morning. He had seen a few far-off axis moving up a ridge, so Brian helped him close the distance in the UTV. It wasn't long before Brian, Max, and Dale snuck up to a ridge and found a group of axis resting under the shade of a rock overhang. Brian picked the bedded deer out and pointed them out to Dale. Despite his rifle suffering a failure to feed, Dale shot 2 deer with 3 bullets, bringing our total to 3 does so far that day. Now feeling the pressure, Brody decided to push even further up the mountain to get me a shot of my own. We moved uphill quickly, bumping 2 different herds of deer on our way up. Getting frustrated, we stopped and waited on a ridge. Sitting and waiting turned out to be just what we needed to do. A small herd of axis does made themselves visible on a ridge about 300 yards away. After stabilizing my rifle on my ruck, I picked out a doe and settled the crosshairs on her and fired. She dropped immediately, and the rest of the does scrambled away before I could pick out another. I didn't manage to get my own shot filmed, so here's some B-roll of Brody using my rifle to take a shot at another group of axis deer shortly after I shot them. A clean miss. Brody and I got down to my doe around the same time Brian, Dale, and Max set to work processing their axis deer. Due to the heat, we set about processing the deer quickly, taking the meat off the bones and placing it in cloth bags to keep the flies off, then hauling it back to the cooler in the back of the Can-Am. Now with 4 deer down, all does, it was time to get some rest out of the sun. We brought the meat back to Brian's to wash and freeze, then went back to the hotel. Our plan was to go back in the late afternoon and try to catch some more axes as they left the upper forest. Dale and I saddled up the Can-Am with Brian and Brody, then went back to the property. I shot one more doe from about 290 yards as we made our way up the mountain in the UTV. It happened very quickly, and I unfortunately did not get footage this time either. We had planned to make it all the way up into the tree line to hunt among the pines, but the weather would not permit it. Thick clouds rolled in yet again, cooling the landscape and keeping us down among the scrub brush of the lower mountain. It's crazy how hot it was this afternoon, and this is like borderline cold. After we returned downhill, Dale and I both got the opportunity to harvest a couple more axis deer. Shot at twilight, Brian and Brody helped us recover the deer in the dark. We ended the night with 8 total, still all does. A very effective cull hunt. I am in a different part of the property than I hunted yesterday, lower part. We think the deer are going to come running up pretty soon here when the sun rises, so hopefully that's the case. Gotta get my rifle loaded because we shot quite a few bullets yesterday, although I will admit I went 3 for 3. 3 bullets, 3 deer. It's an incredible experience out here, but it is tough to get here. That is for sure. So, rifle's super dusty. Our hunt last night, we instead of hiking around, thankfully we drove around in the UTV looking for deer. Saw hundreds of them, many of them in parts we couldn't shoot, but such is hunting, I suppose. So, okay, it is now 6:42, and I am pretty certain this is not where Brian wanted me to sit, but I am very tired, and it is a perfect spot for a nap. Pretty heavy cloud cover today. Threatening rains. It was supposed to rain yesterday, but it only drizzled for a couple minutes, so we'll see. It's cool hunting out here. I don't know. Well, nowhere else in the world can you hunt deer and see Maui. I guess except for on Maui, but you know what I mean. Tropical island paradise, 70 to 90,000 deer. What's not to love? I found myself directly under the Molokai airport flight path, a new Mokulele Airlines Cessna buzzing overhead every couple of minutes. While listening to one axis doe bark her way through the brush, I became fixated in the direction I expected her to appear. In doing so, I lost focus on the 2 trees I knew the deer would be headed towards for shade later in the day. That's them barking. There's one super close to me over here. And then there's a bunch just over here. When I remembered to check the trees, I sat up to turn around. Around 30 axis deer bolted from under the trees. I stayed low, using the rock for cover, and hoping that with my floppy hat and camo shirt, the deer didn't know exactly what I was. The deer walked away quickly in a single file line. trying to decide if I want to take a shot at one. Plenty of good shots. There's one buck, like spike buck. We aren't here for them, but yeah. I tried to line up a good shot on one of the does to no avail. All but one of the skittish animals ran over the ridge into the next draw, the lone remaining doe standing and barking at me. My only shot, an unsafe, low percentage shot on her neck as she stood skyline to me. These axes would live another day. Alright, so the reason I'm not shooting is any shot I take right now, the round's gonna go, if I miss, it's just gonna sail off into the distance. I don't have a good backstop, so I'm just gonna have to let them bark at me. I also discovered that I forgot my knife, so I'd have to have someone come get it for me. Plus I shot 3 already, so dilemma. After blowing my chance with that large herd of axis deer, I figured it wouldn't hurt to move locations. I went back uphill, trying to keep the trees in sight, while choosing another advantageous location. I passed through another wallow, walking over the bones from previously killed deer, shed antlers, and more scat than you would believe. Alright, we're pretty much set up. Might have myself a Rice Krispie bar or something. But, yeah, you might ask yourself, what are you going to do? 8 deer. That is, you guys have brought in 8 deer, processed out 8 deer. That is a lot of meat. What are you going to do with 8 deer? No one needs 8 deer. And quite frankly, it's probably true. But we're not shooting these deer out of greed, if that makes sense. Like I said, there's something like 70 to 90,000 deer on the island, of an island of 7 or 8,000 people. They wreak, whatever. They cause havoc with the local landscape. Axis deer are an introduced species. Calling them invasive is, I think, maybe unfair to the deer. They were actually a gift to the royal family, the Hawaiian royal family, in I think 1840s in there. From I think the premier of Hong Kong. I might be wrong. I'll look it up. But they were introduced to Molokai and Maui as a substitute for cattle. Cattle take a lot of water. They need a lot of space for grazing. One of the things that Hawaii does not have is space. Axis deer are smaller, a little bit hardier, more resilient. They don't need a ton of space. They don't need a ton of water. But when they were introduced here, there's no predators or anything like that. They were just kind of turned loose and they've run amok. So what I'm out here doing with Brian is a cull meat hunt, right? We're out here, we're not chasing antlers. We're trying to shoot as many of does in particular, especially mature does, as possible to help reduce population numbers. Now, the meat is it's not all altruistic. I'm not out here out of the good of my heart shooting deer. That it's one, hunting is fun. I like to hunt. This is one of the best opportunities to hunt in Hawaii, I think. I live on Oahu right now. You can hunt pigs, mostly dog and knife. You can't really hunt with a rifle. Too crowded, too, residential. I'm sure you can. Someone will correct me. That's fine. But I haven't, right? I've only hunted rifle here on Molokai. I think there's opportunities on Maui, but Maui's, whatever. That doesn't seem as exciting to me, I get, for some reason. The meat is great. Axis deer meat tastes delicious. And we are limited. The small little island hopper planes that we flew over here only get so much weight, and I'm using one of my bags to take my rifle back and forth. So Any meat that we don't bring back, though, goes back to the community. So Brian is really tied in with his community, and he helps provide meat to families in need in the community, or families who can't hunt or don't hunt or whatever the case may be. They need some protein. They get access deer. So none of it goes to waste. We're not out here shooting deer and just leaving them. I believe the state of Hawaii has some like official cull hunters. I don't know what they do with that meat. I would be surprised if, I understand they shoot them from helicopters, so I would be surprised if they land and butcher them out and then, pack the meat out. I would assume they just shoot them and leave them lie. But yeah, 8 deer. Neither Max, Dale, or I were able to take an ethical shot on any of the deer we saw throughout the morning. So we took a couple hours of rest, then headed out one more time to try to get Max another deer. We loaded up the Can-Am and headed back up into the mountains. As soon as we got into the property, we started seeing deer by the dozens. Axis deer crisscrossed every which way in front of the Can-Am, running around us in wide circles. They would run uphill, then back downhill, evading us in the safety of the dense woods. We rode about halfway up the mountain to stopping glass. We saw quite a few deer far away, so Brian turned us back around and drove us to the other side of the property.
Oh, hopefully it's flat. Right here. Fucking right back to the same thing.
That's like they were last night.
Oh my goodness.
There's a bunch right back in there.
Come on, go run around the road. Push them back. Go run around the other side and come through the trees before they cross over.
On our way back around, we ran into more deer in the thick brush at the bottom of the mountain. Brian sent Brody out to chase them, trying to push the deer into an area where we could shoot. The night before, while Dale, Brian, and I were busy recovering deer we had shot, Brody actually caught an uninjured Axis fawn with his bare hands. I was hoping he would do it again, and this time I would catch it on video. No dice, and off we went. By the time we arrived at our hunting spot, we saw hundreds of Axis deer running around in the property's lowlands. This area is very close to the local community college, and Brian likes to joke that the Axis have spent too much time there and became too smart.
Right down there.
Oh, there's a nice buck in there too.
It's a nice buck.
Yeah.
You're running circles around us, Dale.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Brian dropped me and Max off to look for more deer while taking Dale further up the trail. We sat on a ridge, eventually seeing a couple herds of Axis deer. These, like so many others, were moving too fast and were too far away to get a shot. Looks like there's some big ones in there, that group. Let's get some eyes on it. Oh yeah, there's a buck who's lost his antlers. At least one. There's some big. The clouds rolled in and finally dumped the rain they had been threatening all weekend. Max and I packed our stuff and hightailed it back to the Can-Am. We were soaked, and the ride back coated us in a thick film of gritty mud. In the end, our conservation cull hunt reduced the Molokai Axis deer population by 8 does. A drop in the bucket to be sure, but every little bit helps. Plus, now we have freezers full of delicious Axis meat. Thank you for watching. I would like to thank Brian Gomes of Kailea Outdoors for the excellent guide service. If you are interested in a similar hunt, I cannot recommend his services enough. Interested parties should contact him via email at k.kkoutdoors@yahoo.com or via Instagram at Kailea_outdoors. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe to see more. You can also visit NorsemanCreative.com for books, articles, and merch to support our creative endeavors. The link will be in the pinned comment below.